So on June 29th, 2022, my trip to Iran changed my perception of a country I had only seen demonized in the news, spoken through my mother's native tongue, and some of the most delicious food I've ever tasted. My name is Oren Crampton. I grew up with the taste and smells of my favorite Persian dishes. My mom always walked around the house speaking Farsi to my grandma, but I never learned the language. I had always observed the Persian culture, but I never truly understood it. I was disconnected from it the whole time. I was American to the core with a taste for Persian cooking. My journey to Iran showed religion, gender roles, and an authoritarian government in a new light I had never seen before. When I recorded this footage back in 2022, my original plan was just to make another family vlog, like I had done before.
Good morning.
I basically accidentally captured Iran in a very brief moment in between major geopolitical and domestic conflicts.
An elite Iranian general is dead, and the United States and Iran are closer to conflict. The U.S. military killed Qasem Soleimani in Iraq today. Washington called it self-defense. Tehran called it a crime and vowed vengeance.
Outside, they burned U.S. and Israeli flags, and a local commander delivered a threat.
Multiple sources said she was beaten in a police truck while in custody. The state released CCTV footage claiming no violence occurred and she collapsed from a heart attack. The news sparked fury. Mashhad's death has created a tidal wave of opposition, unlike anything seen in Iran for decades.
We had planned to visit family my mom had not seen since leaving Iran in 1985. We were visiting these 5 cities all across Iran. And of course, we could not show up to these families empty-handed. So we had packed all of our gifts in these 14 suitcases.
Wait, why did she pay it? Well, you hold this. Because this
The
is
point of view.
It's her cross, so she
Point of view.
I'm gonna wear them.
How much? A band? A whole band?
And to start this story, we have to go all the way back to 1953 to show you why we could not ship these packages back in 2022. In 1952, a man named Mohammad Mossadegh was elected as Prime Minister of Iran. Now, Iran was full of freedom until he did a big no-no. Something you didn't do in the 1950s without consequences. Mossadegh nationalized Iran's oil, taking away rights from UK oil companies. Consequently, in 1953, the United States and United Kingdom funded a coup against Mossadegh under suspicions of communist sympathy. I mean, there's a first-hand account of everything that happened in this book. This coup and the subsequent placing of the pro-Western Shah, or dictator of Iran, Mohammad Reza Pahlavi, sowed the seeds for the Iranian Islamic Revolution. The Shah ruled over Iran with an iron fist, with the backing of the United States and United Kingdom. Iran had relative political stability for about 27 years, until the people could take no more of the Shah, and rumblings of revolution started again. Now, where is my mom in this story? Because that's ultimately where I tie in as well. Back in 1977, my mom was conveniently born in the United States when my grandpa was studying abroad. While my mom and grandparents were in the US, Islamic leader Ruhollah Khomeini overthrew the Shah of Iran. At 2 years old, my mom went back to Iran the same year Khomeini took power of Iran. She lived in Iran for the first 9 years of the regime, before returning back to the US in 1985. The summer of 2022 may have been the perfect and only time to visit the place where my favorite food was born. Despite all the alleged dangers, we had an eternal layover in Frankfurt, Germany that put half our group to sleep. After Frankfurt, our stop was the capital of Iran, Tehran. It was around midnight when we first drove into Tehran from the airport, and I was kind of blown away by how many families and people were just out and about, walking around in parks so late at night. People just stayed out later in Iran. There was more of a night culture. It was almost like the whole city didn't wake up until the sun went down. Also, the city of Tehran was very green, contrary to what most people in the US said about the Middle East. As we walked through this massive park in Tehran called the Abul Atash Park, it was a beautiful display of Iranian architecture and kind of gave us a taste for how normal the people of Iran are. And when I say normal, I mean they're just much more similar to Americans than I would have guessed. We even got to eat American food. I mean, kids were hanging out on their phones, there was a skate park, there's lots of activities around the area. The place in Tehran where I noticed a stark difference was the first mosque we visited. Now, this mosque, like many other things in Iran, had separated gender entrances, so men and women were separated. Now, I got to just walk right in with my camera, no one even looked at me. But my sister, grandma, and mom, and cousin all had to get stopped at the checkpoint and put on a whole extra layer of clothing, even though they already had a scarf or a hijab on. The mosque itself was spotless. It was a beautiful and peaceful place where families gathered for the night. At the entrance of the mosque, there was a large group praying. Now, this group was exclusively men. It was another symptom that we saw in Iran of a religion that excluded women. Despite this, Islam still holds lots of weight in people's minds in Iran, men and women. I mean, there's real benefit to Islam and religion in general, but it can also be used as a great separator of gender, class, and background. There's also a leftover clash between the Shah's old guard and the Western imprint and the new Khomeini regime in the country. For example, we ate at these restaurants that were the former estates of the rich class in the Shah's Iran.
God damn.
Similarly, you have the Azadi and Mashhad Tower, two rivaling monuments from two different regimes, both stemming from the same Shahistan Pahlavi architecture project. Construction on the Azadi Tower began in 1972, 7 years before the Iranian Revolution. The Azadi Tower is meant to commemorate the 2500th anniversary of the Persian Empire, but it instead was seen as the last testament of the Shah. In an effort to overshadow the Shah's regime, the Khomeini regime, which was after the Khomeini regime, picked up the Pahlavi project and began construction on the Mashhad Tower. Construction on the tower started in 1997 and was renamed the Mashhad Tower in remembrance of Khomeini, the founder of the Islamic Republic. I'll admit, I found the tower to be pretty cool. Standing at 1,427 feet, it's the 6th largest telecommunications tower in the world. Now, the Mashhad Tower could be seen as how far Iran has come technologically in the past few decades. But standing at the top of the tower, overseeing the thick layer of smog that lay over the city, the dense urban sprawl, and the thousands of cars stuck in traffic, represented the Islamic Republic of Iran perfectly. a dystopia. The Mashhad Tower has the facilities to support thousands of people, and I don't know if I went on the wrong day, but it just felt empty and soulless. It was like something you would see out of a Star Wars movie. Now, this is not an advocacy for the Shah in any way. He was a dictator in his own right, but I feel like the Azadi Tower represents Iranian history, culture, and architecture in a much more meaningful way, not as an ego boost as the Mashhad Tower is.
Wow, that is insane. I took the top off. I'm looking like hot sauce.
Once we got to Isfahan, we spent a lot of time with family. We went shopping, we went to go eat, we were eating, and we were eating. There was truly never a moment in Iran where I went hungry. Each household we would go into, they would immediately present you with fruit and drinks the second you walked through the door. This was followed with various other rounds of snacks until the main event of dinner. We would usually sit in a rectangle formation around an assortment of basmati rice, kebabs, torshi, and sabzi, and of course the 2-liter of Pepsi right in the middle of it all. Anyway, the time that really stuck out to me in Isfahan was playing soccer with my second cousin Shahab's youth soccer team. Shahab and I took the trek through this mountainous, arid desert to this green oasis of soccer. Soccer seemed to be a safe space for everyone to get away from the hectic and often destitute everyday reality of life. Naturally, after watching the practice for a little bit, I ventured towards the desolate basketball court. The court looked like it hadn't been touched in years, but it just called out for me. So after shooting around for a little bit, I went back and joined the group for a scrimmage. When I introduced myself to the kids, they were in awe that I was from the US. Even with everything the US had done in the Middle East for the past 2 decades and the way the government wanted people to think about the US. The idea of what America was still larger than life in these kids' minds. The US was a place they had seen through every form of media, sports team, car, and clothing brand, but they could really only imagine what it was like to live there. Although I was from the other side of the world, and I could barely speak any Farsi, soccer was a unifying language that broke down any barriers we may have had.
پاس اشتباه دادی بزن به گل بزن زرد گل زرد بزن به گل سامان یالا رفت
We left much of our family in Isfahan on the drive to Shiraz. On the drive to Shiraz, we stopped in Persepolis and saw many ancient sites that served as a reminder to how long Persians have ruled over this land, and just how long kings and peasants alike have fought and died for control over this land.
It's ridiculous. How many dumb suitcases we brought? Makes me so mad.
Shiraz was an absolutely stunning city that displayed Iran's rich culture and hospitality. We stayed in what's called an original house that was over 180 years old. It had amazing service and kind of gave a sense of what it would be like to live in Iran 200 years ago. We visited the historic Bagh-e-Iram garden in Shiraz that traced back to the 13th century.
900-year-old garden that's since turned into a research center.
The name Iram was a perfect description for the garden. Heaven in English. The Iram garden was flourishing with all types of flowers, plants, and trees with a beautiful courtyard in the center. And if I didn't know any better, I would have thought the courtyard was Southern California. Overall, Shiraz was teeming with Iran's personality and rich history. And it's a place I would recommend to anyone who is visiting Iran for the first time or only had one city to go to. After our peaceful stay in Shiraz, we took a drive down to the gates of hell in Ahvaz. The other half of my mom's family lives in Ahvaz. Now, the second we stepped out of the car, we were blasted by heat. We had come from an Austin summer and thought we had seen it all. But this Ahvaz heat made Austin seem like a joke.
Those like onions.
Mommy, where? Kodra, hurry up. Where did we go last time?
Ahvaz is an oil city near the border of Iraq. The city was already hot, but years and years of oil refining and the compound effects of global warming had made the city especially hot. Even the night wasn't enough to cool the city off, with temperatures of 100 degrees Fahrenheit getting reached at midnight. Now, the weather wasn't enough to ruin our stay, as we were able to visit lots of family. The most notable moment in Ahvaz was visiting my grandmother's sister.
G?
She was a very nice woman, but she was nearly immobile in her own home. As I looked around her home, there was a somber feeling of old wounds not yet healed. A picture hung on the wall of her son dressed in uniform, a memorial to a loved one lost in the Iran-Iraq War. We all sat in silence as she prayed for him. It was a reminder to wars politicians wage so haphazardly, using people as pawns in their chess game of ideology. The war that ravaged Ahvaz started in September of 1980, and it was due to a long string of border disputes. But Saddam Hussein, the former leader of Iraq, justified it as a way to stop Khomeini's spread of his Shia revolution. It was a war in which both sides claimed victory, yet neither side gained significant territory. Borders remained largely the same, and 500,000 people died. While the Iran-Iraq War seemed to be completely useless, despite killing hundreds of thousands of people and destroying both countries' economies, it ended up sowing the seeds of future conflicts for decades to come.
What's up, guys? We're leaving the best city in the entire world. It's very sad to see it go, but you know, we have to leave. It is only 118 degrees out here. Chilly weather for a guy like me.
We drove to the Tehran airport with all of our baggage, and of course the security was separated by gender. Since I was traveling with all women, I went through my security check by myself. It was just me and the security guards in the checkpoint. As they checked my bags, they asked me questions like where I was from, But since I didn't speak very much Farsi, I really didn't have much to respond with. They were obviously confused, so they began to just guess where I was from if I didn't speak Farsi. They said things like Azerbaijan and Turkey, until I responded and told them that I was from the US. Now, most people in the US would probably have thought I made a massive mistake by telling them where I was from. But they were enthused, they were blown away that I was from the US. They all gathered around, started asking me questions about the US. They were really just amazed by it. So I just sat here and watched these people that basically represented the Iranian government, as security guards or TSA type agents, all amazed that I was from the United States, like a country they were supposed to hate. Now, it was all going great until one of my bags set off an alarm that just started blaring. The casual questions stopped, and I started to get a little nervous. They then started asking me if I had any knives or anything that could have set off the alarms, and I was like, obviously I didn't bring any knives to the checkpoint, like why would I do that? As they had began to manually check the bags to find out what was setting off the alarm, my family had already finished their security checkpoint. So they were all waiting, wondering what had happened to me. So as the security guards were looking through my bags, they couldn't find out what was causing these alarms. My second cousin burst through the exit side of the security checkpoint, the men-only side, and she started aggressively asking all these questions to the guards. This made me even more nervous because I was like, is she supposed to be doing this? Is this allowed? As she was aggressively talking to them, the security guards opened up a bag with all of the food stuff. They opened up a food container, and inside there's just a single knife. I was mortified as why my grandma would leave me with a knife in the bag without actually taking the knife out. We're going through a security checkpoint. And I was wondering if I was going to get arrested for this. Instead, the security guards completely brushed the knife off and were just glad that they found out what was causing all the issues. And just let us go. Just let me continue to go to my plane. Stand up now and face the sun. Won't hide my tail or turn. I was shocked and relieved by how chill the Iranian security was. And how, despite what many people in the US might have thought, I did not get thrown in Iranian prison.
She said that. And you were like this.
What? We left Ahvaz for the religious city of Mashhad. It was a holy week for Shia Muslims, so people had come to Mashhad from all over the Muslim world, including Europe, Africa, and East Asia. And since our long-distance Farsi teacher, Mohsen, lived in Mashhad, he had become our tour guide for the stay. One of the first places we went in Mashhad with Mohsen was this 6th-floor super mall that was one of the most modern malls in Iran. So the next mall we went to after this super futuristic mall was the Bazar Riza Mall, which was very significant to Muslims because it was right next to the Imam Riza Shrine. The Imam Riza Shrine is a very significant pilgrimage site for Shia Muslims. Now, instead of being 6 floors high, this mall was just like a tube, and it was just a long tube like many of the other bazaars we saw. After a particularly exhausting time shopping in the mall, we went outside to the front to sit down. And after sitting down and looking around for a little bit, I couldn't help but notice the large portrait of Khomeini, and beside him, Khomeini, overlooking all of the masses as they walked in and out of the mall. And right below them, the fallen comrades during the Islamic Revolution. Now, it was a very hot day that day. It was nearly 95 degrees Fahrenheit, and luckily for me, I didn't have to wear a scarf or a hijab at all. But I was traveling with my mom, sister, grandma, and cousin, so they were all women, so they all had to wear their hijabs, and they were beginning to overheat as they sat there. And not only was it required to wear a hijab in public in Iran, but especially during a holy week, and especially that close to the Imam Riza Shrine, which people come hundreds of miles to visit. So my 13-year-old American sister didn't fully understand the context of this situation of like, I didn't either, for reference, but the significance of wearing the hijab at this time. So naturally, she kind of just had it resting on her shoulders, not fully covering her hair. And that's when a woman approached us looking very angry. So this lady came up to us and started sternly instructing us, angrily talking to my family. And since me and my sister don't really speak any Farsi, we were just very confused, like, oh, I guess Iran has Karens too. You know, she was just randomly talking shit to us. Well, my family seemed to completely understand this and just fix my sister's hijab as fast as possible. And the lady just moved on when my cousin cussed her out a little too loud for comfort. Luckily, this lady just kept walking. But I didn't realize until shortly after that this lady was part of the morality police. The morality police is the same force that was responsible for the death of Mahsa Amini 2 months after we left Iran. The situation showed me just how easily you could end up in a spot like Mahsa Amini, and in an authoritarian government where civil rights can be taken away at a whim, something as trivial as not wearing a hijab at the wrong time and wrong place can result in the death penalty. I also saw the other side of the spectrum at Mashhad, essentially the justification for all the Islamic rules we have in the modern day Iran. Mohsen, our tour guide for the city, offered to take me to the biggest mosque in Mashhad and in the entire world, the Imam Riza Shrine. So the mosque was built around the shrine containing the remains of Ali al-Rida, which is described as the heart of Shia Iran, with 25 million Iranian and non-Iranian Shias visiting the country each year. The complex holds 7 courtyards, which cover an area of 3,569,080 square feet. And like every other mosque, it's a place for people to come together, a place of peace where they can talk, enjoy each other's company, and pray. Even though the mosque and the courtyards were extremely busy, they remained spotless. The main event of the mosque was the shrine of Ali al-Rida, and it was certainly treated as so. Ali al-Rida was the 8th Shia Imam, or leader of the Muslim community, and was believed to be the successor of the Prophet Muhammad. As we approached the dome, it was covered in all golds, signaling the sanctity of the Ali al-Rida's place of rest. The energy in the Ali al-Rida's place of rest was powerful. Seeing that many people moved by someone who died in 818 was a statement to the power of religion. I was unsure of my place in that room, but I found an organized chaos like many things in Iran. The herd of people circled around the dome as people pushed to get closer. Children in the center, closest to his place of rest, hung from the bars. The walls of the shrine were covered in blue and teal tiles, and chandeliers made everything glisten. The shrine was truly a beautiful sight, and its survival over 1,000 years plus goes to show the prevalence of Islam in Iran and how prevalent it is, especially today. On the plane ride back to Tehran, I was happy to be on my way back home, but I started to reflect on all my experiences in Iran. The Imam Riza Shrine is more than the heart of Iran. It is a heart of the very ethos that now governs this country. It's what Khomeini had in mind during his great Islamic revolution and what his successors have fought so hard to maintain. But is the salvation Islam provides worth it when the people are against its governance? When hundreds of thousands of people protested the murder of Mahsa Amini and the subsequent crackdown by the government of those protests, is that what Khomeini had imagined in his ideological nation of Islam? No. I don't believe it was ever about Islam. I think Islam was merely a tool that was used to bring people together against the Western imperialism that had robbed the country of its autonomy in the 1950s. I think Khomeini has been able to use Islam to gain complete control over Iran, and with this control, he's used his power as a disproportionate law over the people. I do believe a strong sense of religion and Islam can be beneficial in a country. But Khomeini and Ali Khamenei have placed maintaining their power over the guidelines of Islam. Now, I truly do believe the people of Iran are ready to join the liberal governments of the West, but through their own means, not some so-called American liberation. My trip to Iran opened my eyes to what life is like under an authoritarian government, and just how easily I could be living under this government if my mom had not been able to leave the country back in 1985. And it's not just any authoritarian government, it's one that intertwines religion with government. And no, it may not be as bad as a totalitarian government such as North Korea, where the people have nearly no rights at all. The people in Iran still have the right to eat, work, drive, and technically pray wherever they want. But just because you are allowed to do certain things doesn't mean you can do these things. The government and economy of Iran are not conducive to many Iranian aspirations, such as wearing shorts or letting your hair flow free. There are also entire fields of work that just don't exist in Iran that are flourishing in other Western countries. Western social media is even banned, but people in Iran still use it. Despite all the limitations the people of Iran face, everyone I met on my journey wants better for themselves and the country and are doing everything in their power to make it happen. Now, the people in Iran fighting for change face down the barrel of a gun, but they still fight to live in a country that hears their voice. The people of Iran and my family who I had met for the first time had given us so much love as guests of this country that I had completely forgotten this was a place I was supposed to fear. My journey to Iran was a culture shock, not in how different the people were, but in how much we had in common. There was nothing I couldn't share over steaming basmati rice with family I had never met before, but felt like we had grown up a few doors down from each other. I don't believe Americans and Westerners should be deterred from visiting such a beautiful country because of fear in the news. If there was anything I learned in Iran, it was despite gender, language, religion, or background, everybody can be united through damn good food. And also, I did deliver those suitcases.
It's literally 2 a.m. and they literally ambushed us.
Let's cut the cord.
It is 2 a.m. in the middle of a random airport and they just pulled up with like speakers and just woke this entire place up.